Hi, and welcome to Tozini Freire's podcast, the connection between one of the Brazil top law firms, a variety of themes under the business law, and you.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're heading straight into a really significant emerging market, Brazil. We've got this incredibly detailed 2025 guide on foreign investment there. So our mission today, let's cut through that legal jargon, make sense of it all. We want to map out the key legal changes, the big opportunities, and maybe flag some of those compliance challenges that could trip you up.
Absolutely. And Brazil, well, the sheer scale justifies this focus. It's huge. I mean, you're looking at the fifth largest country globally, a population over 212 million people. That's a massive consumer market right there. And the GDP, around US $2.1 trillion for 2024. But the number that really catches the eye is the foreign direct investment, the FDI.
Right. The FDI figures were pretty striking.
Yeah, they hit over US $71 billion in 2024. That's up, nearly 14% from the year before. It just confirms Brazil is really the top spot for investment in Latin America. They're clearly signaling they're open for business. But, and this is key, understanding their legal system, which is, evolving fast, is crucial for success, especially with that diverse economy, agribusiness, industry, you name it.
Okay, let's dive into those legal changes then, because a big theme that comes through is modernization. Brazil seems to be genuinely trying to streamline things, cut down on that infamous bureaucracy for foreign investors. Where's the evidence?
Well, you see it straight away with how they handle money flows, the foreign exchange market. They recently took almost 40 separate, really old banking regulations and consolidated them, just one single modern legal framework now. And this wasn't just tidying up. It felt like a real signal, aligning with global practices.
Okay, consolidating nearly 40 rules sounds good on paper. But, did it actually simplify things for investors on the ground? Or is it just new paperwork?
No, it seems to be making a real difference. The impact is about speed, predictability, making things more aligned internationally. Now non-residents can hold accounts in Brazilian reais. Same treatment as residents. That's a change. And practical stuff, too, like allowing lease payments directly from abroad. It just makes moving capital in and getting returns out smoother. Helps explain those big FDI numbers we mentioned.
Yeah, that clarity on capital flow is definitely fundamental. But okay, before money moves, it needs tracking, right?
Yeah.
What about registration? What are the must-dos for non-resident investors?
Right. The central bank uses an electronic system, CISBasin, for this. Any foreign investor, individual or company, has to get registered first in the declaratory register of non-residents. That's before the investment happens. And for foreign direct investment, like buying equity or corporate restructuring, you have to report any transaction or movement of US $100,000 or more.
$100,000. Okay. That's the threshold. Seems like a clear gateway.
Exactly. It's how they track all the foreign capital coming in.
All right, let's shift gears to something, pretty complex. Transfer pricing. This affects how multinationals allocate profits across borders, right? Brazil had its own unique system for ages. Now, it looks like a major overhaul is happening. Tell us about moving to the OECD's arm's length principle.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest, most immediate legal shift investors need to grapple with. It's huge. Brazil is essentially ditching its old system, the one based on fixed profit margins and formulas. Starting in 2024, though, you could opt in for 2023. They're adopting the global standard, the OECD's arm's length principle, or ALP.
Wait, I thought Brazil stuck with that old system specifically to protect its tax base. Moving to ALP,
Right.
What's the immediate strategic hit for a big multinational?
Well, the immediate hit is it basically throws years of supply chain and tax planning out the window, or at least forces a major review. It means MNEs, multinational enterprises, have to completely redo their documentation, how they allocate risk, their valuation methods with their Brazilian operations. They now have to treat their Brazilian subsidiary just like one in, say, Germany or the US under OECD rules. The idea is it integrates Brazil better into global supply chains, reduces double taxation risks. But yeah, the compliance burden, especially initially, is significant for companies used to those fixed margins.
That integration push is definitely a strong signal to the global markets.
Okay.
Say an investor likes the opportunity, they've done the initial FX registration stuff. Now they want to actually set up a company locally. What's the absolute first step, the non-negotiable thing?
It comes down to liability and representation. You can't avoid this. Every single foreign investor, whether it's you as an individual or your overseas company, needs a Brazilian tax ID. That's the CPF for individuals, CMPJ for companies. And crucially, you must appoint a legal representative who actually lives in Brazil. They need to be Brazilian, naturalized, or have a permanent visa. This person carries the legal and tax liability for the company.
So you can't just manage it all remotely from headquarters. You need boots on the ground, someone legally responsible in Brazil. Okay. Once you have that representative, what are the main ways to structure the local business, the main company types?
Usually it boils down to two main choices: the limitada, or LTA, and the sociedade anónima, the SA. The LTDA is kind of your standard, simpler option. Think of it like a Brazilian LLC. It's governed by the civil code, less formal. You can even set it up with just one owner, no minimum capital needed. The main limitation: it can't issue shares or bonds easily, it can't tap into public capital markets.
And the SA, I guess that's for bigger plants, more complex.
Exactly. The SA is built for raising serious capital. It falls under the Brazilian corporation law, so there's more formality. Listed ones need a board of officers, for example. But the big advantage is it can issue securities, bonds, debentures, commercial paper. It can access the capital markets. If an IPO or major financing is part of the plan, you're likely looking at an SA.
Makes sense. And before we move on from setup, what about transparency? Knowing who ultimately owns the company, the UBO rules.
Oh, absolutely. Critical for compliance. UBO, ultimate beneficial owner. Any foreign company investing has to tell the Brazilian IRS who the UBO is. That means the actual person or people pulling the strings. You've got 30 days after registering to do this. The general rule is they look at anyone holding over 25% of the capital, directly or indirectly. Get this wrong and you face fines, sure, but worse, it can block your transactions at the central bank. It's serious.
Right, that UBO compliance sounds like a major box to tick. Okay, so if getting set up correctly is one hurdle, navigating the sheer complexity of Brazil's system in areas like tax and labor, that's the ongoing challenge, isn't it? Let's start with tax again. We talked transfer pricing changing now, but you mentioned a huge shift in consumption taxes coming over the next decade.
Yeah, this is the one causing headaches for long-term planning right now. It's Constitutional Amendment Pack 452023. It's a massive overhaul aiming to replace 5 existing consumption taxes: ICMS, ISS, PIS, COFINS, and IPI. They're complex state and federal level taxes. The plan is to replace them with a simpler dual VAT system, CBS and IBS, plus a new selective excise tax, the IS.
Okay, 5 down to 3 sounds simpler eventually, but you flagged the transition timeline. It's really long. How long are we talking?
We're talking incredibly long. Almost a decade of transition. The new taxes, CBS and IBS, start getting phased in around 2026. But the old taxes, they won't be completely gone until 2033. So for businesses operating there, especially foreign ones, you're basically running 2 tax systems side by side for years. Managing the old 5 while learning and adapting to the new dual VAT, it's definitely not simple yet. It's peak complexity for the next decade, frankly. Requires constant expert tax advice.
Wow, 2033, that's a long period of managing dual systems. Huge diligence required there. Okay, let's switch to labor law. Beyond just the employment contracts, what are the big social regulations that companies, especially foreign ones, need to be aware of right now?
Well, first, it's worth remembering that in Brazil, collective agreements, unions, and employers negotiating can actually override or shape some rights set out in the basic labor laws. The big exception is anything related to health and safety. That's protected. But beyond that framework, 2 recent laws really stand out. First, the gender equity law from 2023. This is significant. If you have 100 or more employees, you now have to publish reports twice a year showing wage and remuneration data broken down by gender. Fail to comply, fines can go up to 3% of your entire payroll.
That transparency push is definitely a global trend, finding its way into Brazilian law. What's the second area? You mentioned mental health.
Yes, exactly. There is a regulatory standard, NR1, which was updated. It now explicitly requires companies to include psychosocial risk prevention in their mandatory risk management program, the PGR. So we're talking about risks like burnout, excessive workplace stress, toxic environments, things beyond just physical safety. This focus on mental well-being becomes enforceable from May 2026. It's a clear expansion of what employers are responsible for.
Okay, good to know. Shifting to the market environment itself, competition. Brazil's antitrust authority, KD, seems quite active. If an investor is looking at a merger or acquisition, what are the key numbers, the thresholds they need to watch to avoid trouble?
Oh, KD takes enforcement very seriously. You don't want to cross them. Merger review is mandatory if the deal hits certain turnover thresholds in Brazil. One party needs turnover over BRL, 750 million. That's roughly, what, US $135 million, and the other party needs turnover over BRL 75 million. The biggest risk here is something called gun jumping. That means starting to integrate the businesses before CADE gives the official go-ahead. The fines for gun jumping are steep, potentially up to BRL 60 million, and CADE seems more willing to impose them recently. You absolutely have to wait for clearance.
Got it. Wait for the green light from CADE.
Eh.
Lastly, let's touch on a huge opportunity area, government contracts. You mentioned the Novo PAC program. The investment numbers sounded massive.
They are massive. The New Growth Acceleration Program, NovoPAC, is forecasting BRL 1.7 trillion. That's about US 340, 350 billion in investment. And it's focused mainly between 2023 and 2026. Think infrastructure, green energy, construction projects. It's a huge pipeline of work. And what's really relevant for foreign companies is the new public procurement law. It's actually designed to be more welcoming. It explicitly allows foreign firms to bid on these contracts as long as they get authorized to set up a local branch or subsidiary first.
That sounds like a deliberate strategy then, using foreign capital and expertise to help build out their infrastructure goals. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. Brazil is clearly open, attracting huge FDI. We've seen real modernization efforts like the FX framework, adopting OECD transfer pricing. That's positive. But then you have this deep, long-term complexity brewing with the tax reform, plus ongoing challenges in labor compliance.
That's the picture, exactly. Brazil offers a lot. It's a robust place to invest. Those FDI figures prove it. But success really hinges on understanding and navigating this legal landscape that's, well, modernizing very fast in some areas while remaining incredibly complex in others. And you need specifics. Take real estate, for instance. If you're an agribusiness or need land for a big industrial plant or maybe a solar farm, you can't just assume you can buy rural land freely as a foreigner. There are restrictions. You often need to use specific legal structures, like something called a surface and rem right, to work around those rules. It's a detail, but it can completely derail a project if you don't get the legal structure right up front.
That's a really important nuance.
Yeah.
And if things do go wrong, disputes happen. You mentioned the court system can be slow.
Yeah, that's an understatement sometimes. The public courts, state and federal, can get really backlogged. We're talking potential timelines stretching out. Some federal cases might take over 6.5 years to get fully resolved. So for serious investors, arbitration isn't just a nice to have, it's pretty much essential risk management. It's faster, usually 18 months to maybe 4 years. It's confidential, and you get specialized arbitrators. You really need to factor arbitration costs and strategy into your planning from day one.
That choice between courts and arbitration sounds like a critical strategic decision then, purely for managing risk and timelines. Okay, bringing it all back to that strategic challenge you highlighted earlier. You've got the new OECD transfer pricing rules hitting now, forcing immediate changes in 2024, big operational shifts. But the massive consumption tax overhaul, the VAT system, won't be fully bedded in until 2033. So for anyone investing now, how do you even structure a long-term strategy? The ground is shifting fast, but the final picture is still, nearly a decade away?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the billion-dollar question for some investors. It means you can't just set up and assume the rules will stay put. You need constant, proactive legal monitoring and advice. You have to plan for this decade of, well, parallel complexity, running old systems, adapting to new ones, all while the final landscape is still taking shape. It demands flexibility, foresight, and really good advisors.